Today's financial uncertainty, a lot of us are left looking for answers or maybe where to invest, what to do with our money. So on today's episode, I have one of the top financial advisors. How do I know he's the top? Because he's my financial advisor. And we're going to talk to him and he's going to give us some advice. I'm Bruno, and this is The Battle Plan. Guys, welcome to the show. And today we have my very good friend, Shaun Parke. Shaun was born and raised in Victoria, BC. And after spending a few years working as a lifeguard first aid instructor, he moved to Calgary, Alberta to pursue a career in emergency services. After spending 15 years working as an advanced life support paramedic and structural firefighter, he then moved back to Victoria. It was at this time that he met his amazing wife, Heidi, and together made the decision to transition away from healthcare and become business owners. Fast forward 6 years, and today Shaun and Heidi are continuing to grow their financial services business, supporting thousands of Canadian families with financial education. My very good friend Shaun is here today. Shaun, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Bruno, my man. Does it ever feel good to be here? Holy smokes. I love spending time with you, obviously, but it's always fun when people who have so much in common get to collaborate like this. And you and I both love helping people. So this feels really good.
It's been a long time coming because we were planning on doing this a long time, and we both got busy and everything. And you know what? But the universe provided, because right now is such a crucial time for Canadian families and Canadian, American, and UK for our listeners all over the place. This is, even for myself, I've asked you a lot of questions about what to do at this time. And because, we all get worried as the inflation goes up and all these things and our investments are going down, there's a correction in the market. We'll be talking about that. But let's start with, one of the first questions. What are the biggest challenges facing Canadians when it comes to money right now?
Yeah, great question. I think, speaking here in Canada, Bruno, I think there's a few things that are really starting to stack up for people. First of all is debt. A lot of people don't know this, but Canada has the highest debt to income ratio out of any other country in the world.
What?
And right now it's 186%. So
No
essentially
way.
what that means is for every dollar coming into the Canadian household for discretionary income, there's $1.86 going out. Right. And so, as I'm sure you can appreciate, that math doesn't add up too well. Right. And so debt's a really big problem. And, for the last couple of years, carrying debt hasn't been very expensive because our interest rates have been very, very low. But what we're seeing is a bit of a perfect storm right now, because not only, is that debt continuing to stack up for people, but interest rates, as we all know, are climbing. They're going to keep going higher. And as well, with inflation and cost of living out of control, it's becoming a real big challenge for a lot of people. And so, understanding, how to cost effectively manage that debt, how to get out of, bad debt, is I think one of the biggest challenges facing Canadians right now.
Right. And do you have a few example of how somebody could, because I was shocked. I knew that I didn't think we were the highest. I knew that, the Canadian families debt ratio was, the last time I had heard was 135. But now you're saying 186. So could you give us a couple of examples of what would be the cause of that? Like how can somebody could be 186% in debt, right? How does that happen?
Yeah, how does that happen? It's a good question, and it doesn't happen with one decision. Historically speaking, what we see is it's multiple smaller decisions that kind of stack up over time. And so, I think we live in a world right now where we want things right away. Right? We want things right away. And it's like, Bruno, why would I save to buy that car when I can just go onto the dealership right now and finance it and drive away with it, in 10 minutes?
Right.
And so there's a huge level of convenience there for people when it comes to accessing debt. Specifically, listen, here's a rule to keep in mind. The easiest debt to access is the worst debt to have. The easier it is to get the debt, the worse it is to have, right? It takes nothing to get a car loan. It takes nothing to apply for a credit card. But what does it take to qualify for a mortgage, right? Significant, hoops to jump through. So that's a good rule. Let's not, dodge this bullet or this elephant in the room. Our Canadian institutions, I'll just say it, the big banks, they profit significantly from people being in debt. Significantly.
That was I wanted to make an observation here, is that I'm surprised that, everybody's concerned about their credit score, right? Every time you go get a loan or you go, mortgage and all these things, I'm surprised that the institution are letting you, even though that every time that they're going to loan you or give you a car or something like that, they look at your credit. It should be shown on there that you're actually maxed out. How is it that they keep on loaning past this? Because I thought that at the beginning, when I grew up, it was always 35% of your gross income that you could, it comes with the mortgages, or that number was thrown around. So why is it that now Canadian family that just went over to 186? How did the institution let that roll?
Yeah. It really, again, they make a lot of money from it. So, it is debt is one of the, it's one of the highest paying processes when you are the institution, right? When your debt is running at 20%, 15%, like the institution's making a lot of money on that. And, how come they let it roll the way they're rolling it? Well, it's just they're corporations, right? And it's kind of just happened in the background. But to speak to something that you mentioned there that I think is important to talk about, I see people all the time so excited and so proud about their credit score. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's good, right? You want to have great credit for sure. But at what cost, right? And what I say to people all the time is, let me ask you this question. How much money did your credit score pay you yesterday?
Right.
And the answer to that is always the same. It's zero, right? Your credit score doesn't pay you anything. It's there if you want to borrow money, right? But what we see all the time, because our business is predicated on providing middle-class Canadian families with financial education. That is really what we do. And when we're supporting people through this process, and it's like, we want to buy a house or we want to do this, it's like, okay, Shaun, how do we do it? I said, well, yes, your credit score is important, and I understand it's impeccable and you're very proud of that. And I don't want to take that away from you, but it's going to take a lot more than that for you to get a house. Because really what counts is what we call your debt to income ratio. And yes, your credit score is perfect because you're paying minimum payments on all of those credit cards, but you don't have a good enough debt to income ratio, meaning this is the amount of money coming in, this is the amount of money that's going towards servicing the debt, and it's almost at par. So it doesn't matter what your credit score is. So usually what we're doing with those people is saying, listen, we need to get onto a 3-year plan here. Is owning a house possible? Yes, it is, but just not right now. So we get that debt under control. We eliminate the super high interest debt. We try and get that tied up into more conservative debt, get it eliminated the best we can. Sometimes that requires you taking a bit of a kick on your credit score, right? But here's the good news. Your credit score is always rebuildable, right? So we get some of that debt eliminated. The credit score takes a bit of a kick. Then we spend the next 3 years rebuilding your savings, getting you a down payment, rebuilding that credit score. And now 3 years down the road, your debt's almost gone. You've got a lump sum from savings here that we've been able to help you squirrel away, and your credit score has been rebuilt. So that's typically how we're helping people do it. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think, again, those institutions and our society has just really made people feel like that number is super, super important. And I don't want to say it's not, but it's not the end all be all. Right.
But let me play the devil's advocate on that. What if somebody is really adamant about keeping their score up and you're saying, yeah, I got this even keel debt to income ratio, and it says, listen, I need another plan than the one you just suggested. I want to keep my score. I want to be able to bring down my debt. I want to, as a financial advisor, what would be the first step at building that?
Well, I mean, listen, you can't take blood from a stone. And really at the end of the day, there's a couple of different things that I would probably suggest. And it's very person specific. What's your income like? Or, do you have the ability to increase your income? Is this a multiple income household? There's a lot of factors, but in general, it's usually this. First of all, what I always say to people is, listen, you need to stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. Because let me tell you something, the Joneses, they're broke. They don't own that house. They don't own that boat. They don't own that Sea-Doo, right? All the trips that they take every year go on a credit card that they still haven't paid off. Stop chasing them, because you're going to chase them into bankruptcy, right? So that's the first thing that, we often tell people is, listen, you need to create a situation where you're trimming the fat here a little bit, and you're living below your means, right? That's really, really important. You never want to be in a break-even situation. You should always, every single month, be saving money. And this is what I think is missing for a lot of people. You need to create habits around saving money. Right? If you can't find a way to save money when you're broke, and I'm talking like 10, 15 bucks a month, then you're never going to do it when you're making six figures, or, you have to create good money habits. And that comes from living below your means, not chasing the Joneses into bankruptcy, and finding a way to save.
Right.
And that's really, that's really the ticket. It's hard. And it's been made hard by design. It's not easy to eliminate and get out of high interest consumer debt. It's super easy to get into it, right? Yeah. Getting into debt's like going down the water slide. Getting out of debt's like trying to climb back up the water slide when the water's rushing down. It's friggin' hard. And it's that way by design. So yeah, if you're in a situation, to answer your question, Bruno, if you're in a situation right now where your cash flow and your monthly income is basically the same as your debt servicing level, and you do not want to touch your credit score because you're worried for whatever reason, then if I was your advisor, I would dig into that for you a little bit. Can you help me to understand, Mr. and Mrs. Client, what it is about your credit score that you're really concerned about?
Good. Awesome. I like that. All right. I like that approach, because you know what the thing is that's one of the first thing we did. Right. We figured out my debt to income ratio. We got rid of the debt. We started investing. We started, little things and little steps towards, my financial stability. I always like to share with the audience that, the things that I'm doing, because if I'm bringing you on the show, that means that I'm doing what you're doing, right? Exactly. I would never say to anybody, hey, listen to this guy if I'm not doing it myself, but that's what it is. We started creating these habits of investing, and I found out that I could live on way much less, on a very, very modest income. And then the rest could be invested in safe or moderate or high risk if I wanted. We went through all of that. So, which leads me to the next question. What would be the benefit? Why would somebody hire a financial advisor like yourself, right? Because I don't know nothing about, I know the basics of investing, of compound interest, and to, how is it going to build? But, like I said, right now, people are having to choose between gas and food and all these things. So yeah, if I was to call you today because I'm worried of where things are going, where would I start?
Yeah. So totally. Great question. It's a bit of a loaded question. I mean, what we would do, like we always do, is we start with the education, right? You need to understand, and we need to understand, what it is you're trying to create, what your financial stresses and headaches are. And we take a look at the big picture. I think that's one of the, the value propositions is, first of all, people don't need to pay to come and see us. That was really important for Heidi and I when we started this business. We wanted to be able to help everyone. So there's no fee for service. And then we just start, from top to bottom, and we take a look at the whole thing and the whole picture. To answer your question, why have an advisor, right? And I think it's an important question. Well, here's the reality. First of all, I don't know about you, Bruno, but I ain't doing my own root canals, right? I'm going to hire an expert to do that, right? I'm going to hire someone that knows what they're doing. So I think from that perspective, you have to recognize and understand that. Now, there's lots of options out there in today's world, right? We have what are called robo advisors. We've got platforms like Robinhood and Wealthsimple and different things like that.
Right. And the banks, right, are always reaching out to us. And some of us from an older generation or, been instructed by our parents, just go talk to your bank investment agents or whatever.
Yeah.
So can you tell me the difference? I know the difference, but I would like the audience to know the difference between going to you or going to the bank or the Wealthsimple and the Robinhoods. Yeah.
Right. So there's a few different things there. First of all, when it comes to the bank and the difference, this is the important thing. If you're listening to this, write this down. You want to be working with someone that has a fiduciary responsibility. And what does that mean?
Very important, guys. Very important.
Very, very important. That means that they have a responsibility. They are obligated by law to make sure they are 100% doing the right things for you. Not doing whatever generates the most amount of commission or whatever's easiest for them. They have to be doing the right things for you. You want to be working with someone whose success is tied to yours, right? And quite often when people walk into institutions and they purchase an investment, or they purchase something at that institution makes all of their money and their commission up front, and it no longer matters to them what happens to the client and what happens to their money.
And I'll share this because that's how we came together, if you don't mind me interrupting you right there, because I want to bring this in. I do this for the audience all the time, the personal side, is that I used to invest with the bank. And then I went and on my coaching courses and everything, I went and took a business mastery with Tony Robbins. And then we learned about the fees up front. And I had no ideas. And here's what I'm going to tell you. They're going to show you at the bank. They showed me this nice graph that said growth over time from 19 whatever to 2007, guys. And I knew that in 2008 we had a big crash. In 2010 we had a big crash. And I said, hey, how come we don't have that after? Oh, the graph hasn't been made yet. And I said, well, there's some crashes there. And then I asked them, hey, can I see the fine print of my investment? And here's what I was going to tell you is that they were telling me I was going to get 8% return. But then after the fees, they were taking 2% for this, 1.6% for that, 2.8 point something for the administration and all these things. So at the end, I was getting anywhere from 2 to 3%. Yeah. And I was like, man, this is not okay. And I learned that because I went to a money seminar to understand how things work. Then, just so you know, this is why I'm working with Shaun. I went and asked him, Shaun, first question out of my mouth, what was it? How do you get paid? Where are the hidden fees and everything? And Shaun didn't even flinch. And he's going to tell you about this.
Yeah, totally. It is really important to know, to understand all this stuff. And listen, I don't want to scare people away thinking that, necessarily fees are a bad thing. They're not a bad thing, right? Just like you have to pay to go and get a root canal done, you don't want the cheapest dentist in town. And so, but being very transparent and very upfront, and I'll be honest with you, I wish our industry did a better job of forcing everyone within the industry to be far more transparent about that, because I think it's obviously important. And for us, it's one of the ways, and I think you highlighted on that, Bruno, it's one of the ways that we feel is important to start building trust. But yeah, listen, you guys, there's a big difference between a gross rate of return and a net rate of return. And the net rate of return is what you want to care about. It's what is actually going into your, pocket at the end of the day. It's the return that you as the investor sees. But yeah, I mean, and so I guess to answer the previous question, what's the difference between the, wealth simples and different things like that? Those platforms, I think, are very well renowned for having very low fees. And that's one of the things that I think people attracts, or one of the reasons why people are attracted to them. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, you still need to be able to have a level of understanding. And what are the things I think, research tells us, statistically speaking, when a Canadian is working with an advisor, and when I mean an advisor, I mean a human being, okay, not a robot, they do 60% better than people that don't have an advisor. Now, we have to lean into that a little bit. Why is that? Right? I wish I could, tell you it's just because I'm, a handsome brute, but that's just not the case.
You are handsome.
The reason that is, Bruno, is because people are emotional creatures. We're all emotional creatures. And when we deem something important, which is money in our lives, and it causes us a little bit of stress and concern, and we're worried about it, and we don't understand it, what happens? We get hyper emotional, right? And so one of the biggest jobs, I think, of an advisor is to really create that level of comfort, and to be, supporting people in, first of all, getting clear with what they want, right? We spend a lot of time when we're onboarding and we're bringing on a new advisor here, we spend an enormous amount of time making sure that they understand, listen, your first and primary job is you need to get really clear with the people you're sitting down. Get curious. What brings you here? What is it you're looking to create? Ideally, what does it look like for you in 10 years? What do you want it to look like in retirement? What would you like for your kids? What's been your biggest number one financial headache thus far, right? And get really, really clear with what people want. From there, you layer in a bunch of education, right? We want to empower people. We want them to feel, excited about what they have the opportunity to create. And then we're going to get real clear on what all their options are, and then how they can go about creating that for themselves. And that component right there, a robot can't do, in my opinion. Robots have great algorithms. They can pick different portfolios based upon, you striking your phone and answering a few questions. But when it comes to the emotional human element, it's my belief, Bruno, that's why people who work closely with an advisor do better than the ones without.
And you know what? And I agree. And that definitely, that personal touch to be able to ask all the question, and then really saying, okay, am I a low level, moderate, or high risk investors? What is it that I'm looking for? We went back and forth a few times. There's different products that, were good. You can get for your wife, for your son, for myself, and all these things. So it was really, really, I enjoyed that personal touch. How much money does somebody need to start investing? If somebody was ready today to sign up and say,
such a good question.
I'm gonna call Shaun, or I'm gonna, go on his site and reach out to him, but I don't have that much money, especially right now, Shaun. This is what's happening, right?
Hey, listen, our traditional financial services industry will make you believe, if they haven't already, that in order to start investing, in order to start getting access to high net worth professional money management, that you need a lot of money. And again, the traditional industry has proven it. Part of the reason why I fell in love with our company, and we too my wife and I, Heidi, who you know very well, we started here as clients, right? 10 years ago. And what I fell in love with was the fact that I never got asked that question. You see, when I realized, Bruno, I was just on the heels of my warm-up marriage. I was, transitioning cities and careers. I had a lot going on. I had lost a lot of money myself in the stock market, trying to like get ahead, do all that stuff. So I knew I needed help, right? I knew I needed help. And in the process, in the spirit of trying to reach out for that help, most of the time when I was on the phone, the first question I got asked was, how much money do you have? And because it wasn't $250,000, $500,000 at the time, I couldn't even make an appointment. Right. No one would even sit down with me because I didn't have enough money. And that is fundamentally the reason, in my humble opinion, why our industry is broken and why it is failing middle-class Canadians. Because people, listen, financial literacy isn't a result of wealth. Wealth is a byproduct of financial literacy. And we need to, as a society, be doing a much better job of empowering our youth and supporting the people that need help the most. And that's young middle-class Canadians, and no one is looking after them. So really, to answer your question, when do I start having money conversations? The answer is yesterday. Yeah. The answer is yesterday. It's not about, listen, here's a great quote from Warren Buffett, one of the most influential and successful investors of the last century.
The Oracle of Omaha.
The Oracle of Omaha. It's not about timing the market. It's about time in the market. Yes. So even going back to, my original conversation or my original message about, if you can't figure out how to save money when you're broke, it's going to be hard to do it when you're wealthy. That's the case. Yeah. You need to start early. Time is the most valuable thing any investor has, And
if I can put in there a little explanation about what you said, if you're not able to save money when you're broke, you won't save money when you're wealthy, is because there is an actual term out there, and I can't think of it right now, but I'll explain what it is. And you're going to find yourself, who's listening to this, you're going to find yourself in this. Everybody, most of the people, I don't know what the average is. I'll say, be generous here. 85% of people, when they get a promotion or a raise or money on their pay, their spending grows with that.
100%.
Do you understand what I'm saying here? Is that most people don't go, hey, I've been living, let's just say you're making $5,000 a month. I've been living on $5,000 a month for the past year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever, that's it. Then they get a raise to $7,500, right? They get a raise to $7,500 a month. They will start spending that extra $2,500, which is not an extra $2,500, because you probably go into a higher tax bracket and then you got more money and then more taxes taken off. But here's what I'm going to tell you: everywhere, because I'm an executive coach, we talk about financial, and then I send them to Shaun. And then what we do is that we talk about that, and we realize that Canadian people, really grow their expenses with their raises, instead of saying, hey, I'm already living at this amount of money, I should invest the rest. That's where the advisor should come in. Sorry 100%. To interrupt, but I think
it's such a valuable and important point, Bruno. It really is. Again, it's keeping up with the Joneses. It's, I want to, do nicer things now that I got an extra $2,500 a month. And here's the reality. Quite often, it's never from 5 to 7,500. It's like from 5,000 a month to 5,600. And so the $600 just kind of washes away and you don't really notice it. And eventually 10 years down the road, now you're up to 7,500. But how come my savings hasn't increased too? Right? Because this is the exact reason, you guys, it takes the average Canadian 47 years to pay off a 25-year amortization. Because what happens? It's like, well, I've got these kind of poor spending habits. I've got, debt just flows to me. It's no big deal. You keep kicking that can down the road. And then what happens? Your 5-year term comes up. It's time to renegotiate your mortgage. And you've got, $15,000, $20,000 of this high interest credit card debt. Well, you know what? We'll just tie that up into our mortgage. And so they take $20,000, $25,000 of their equity, they clean off those credit cards, and then they just keep kicking that can down the road for the next amortization and the next term. And, you know, it's, yeah, habits, spending habits are so, so important. And, you know, yeah, saving money. If I'm having a conversation with someone and they say to me, you know what, Shaun, yeah, I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you. I'm going to call you as soon as I have some money to save. And I said, if you don't have money to save today, then you need to call me yesterday. Right. And we need to solve that problem. And we need to try and create a situation for you where you do have money to save. And, you know, maybe we can, you know, do some things like get rid of some debt, or, you know, help you with, you know, some taxation and decreasing your taxable life. Who knows what it looks like, or if there's any options, but explore them.
Yeah.
Do not wait.
Shaun, let's talk about what you said earlier. Emotions. People are embarrassed. Mm-hmm. People are embarrassed. They feel like they're not educated. They you know, what are the three things we don't talk about when we're growing up, right? Religion, money, and then what was the other one? Sex or something like that, right? Yeah. Exactly. We don't talk about. So money is obviously a big issue for people. And then we're shamed into this consumerism, you know, and having these, you know, 5 credit cards and, you know, doing these things like we learn. And this is what I'm saying, guys, when the example that I made about growing your expenses with your raises is also something that I've learned because I was looking out there to improve my habits. But also when I had started my business, and after the first year, we get the business financial report, and in there you have, you know, your expenses, you have, you know, your gross of what you pulled in. And at the end of the fact sheets, it tells you, this is your profit you made. And I'm like, I'm looking at my bank account and I'm looking at this sheet. And then this said I should have, you know, 50, 100 grand into the bank account. And there's like 19 grand in there. And I go, where did it all go? Yeah. This is what a financial advisor will do for you to find out where the leaks are, where are the money. And I call them leaks, guys, because this is what we're talking about. You're not making big ticket items purchase. What's costing us is, you know, the $5 coffee and the little 20 here at Walmart and this little thing. And that keeps on, you know, pouring out and leaking out. And then you do the big purchases. And then one thing you realize, you said, oh, I have $5 grand space on my credit card. Now they're telling me I can go to 7,500 because it's full. Exactly. Right. So those are the lessons that, you know. So what do you say about somebody who might be right now listening and embarrassed about their situation, right? Because you're saying we need to talk yesterday, right? So that puts a little bit of pressure on me. I said, I know I need to talk to someone, but I'm embarrassed, Shaun.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's okay to be embarrassed today, but it's not okay to stick your head in the sand forever. You know, one of the best things, you know, regardless of what your current situation is, regardless of, you know, how embarrassed you are about it, you know, one of the reasons why, you know, our situation has been compounding and predicating to the point where it is currently today for Canadians is because we're not talking about it. We're not having conversations. And one of the things that I always encourage people to do is you need to have conversations with your kids, not to go on a bit of a side note there, but because here's the thing, if you don't, here's what I promise you your kids are going to pick up on: financial stress, worry, you know, mom and dad kind of bickering, right? All that kind of stuff. And that's going to be their money mindset. That's going to be what they grow up in and grow up with. And so it's super, super important, regardless of your current situation, regardless how embarrassed you are. I promise you it's worse elsewhere, right? I promise you it's worse. If you took 100, you know, situations and you put them all into a hat, chances are you'd want to go back for your own situation, right? So we need to start, we need to take our ego out of the way, right? We need to recognize that, you know what? I'm really just a product of my environment. I'm a product of this system. This system hasn't been serving me well. So I've got some opportunity to make some changes. Whether you're
Right.
60, 50, 20, I don't care. You've got the opportunity to make some changes. So start having a conversation, and if not just purely for you and your wealth and your long-term being and how you want to be living your life, do it for the people around you, because we have to break that chain of, we don't talk about money because we're embarrassed about it, but yet we live in this society where, you know, we've got flashy things, we've got access to all this stuff, and the people we care the most about, again, I'm talking to the parents out there, believe me when I tell you they are paying attention. And if you want to really set them off on the right foot, you really want to empower them, start having the conversations with yourself so you can start having conversations with them. And it has nothing to do with the amount of money in your bank account, whether the balance in your bank account starts with a dash or there's 7 figures in there. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Don't be deceived by that. It's time to just put the ego aside, recognize, man, am I ever lucky? I live in a country where we have access to people that can help, you know, and get out there and find someone that you like, someone that you trust, start having these questions, and there's always hope. There's always hope.
There is. And I like to remind people, you know, my clients, when they're saying, you know, I'm embarrassed about this, or that was a mistake that I make and everything. And I said that, you know what, there's no failures. There's only feedback, first thing. And then second, you did the best you could with the information you had at the moment of. Totally. And that's it. Right. Totally. So the thing is that we were all left to fend for ourselves and figure this out. And most of us, like Shaun was saying at the beginning, and when I read his bio, most of us were bouncing off the walls of life, going at what we learned from our parents, from the school, from the teachers, and put everything that's been thrown into our face. Now, I don't want us to assume the victim mentality here, but to actually be realizing that, yes, the system is designed for us to consume constantly. If you're unaware, you don't even stand a chance. That's right. This is what I'm telling you. You don't stand a chance. You get a letter in the mail constantly. You've been pre-approved. You've done this. Come over here. 0% interest, and blah, 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 everywhere to get you to consume. That's and then right. You wake up one morning and you go, I don't know. I'm underwater here. I need to breathe.
Yeah. So it's pretty hard to win the money game when you don't understand the rules.
Exactly. So. Right? One of the things when you did your presentation to me and everything, and you talk about, you know, you put it in such a great way, but one of my favorite things is, what are the 4 Ds of investing?
Oh yeah, totally. So, yeah, so this is kind of like, you know, investing 101. We kind of support people with you know, some, again, understanding. Our goal is to empower people. Right? If you know, oftentimes people are like, oh, Shaun, I just trust you, do your thing. It's like, okay, great. I appreciate that. I'm flattered, but that's not the outcome we're trying to achieve here. We want you to have a clear understanding. And so we try and break it down again. So like people like me can figure this out, Bruno. I operated like a grade 3 level a lot of times. I am not the
you and I both.
The boss. Yeah, right. Yeah, this is why Bruno and I jive so well. So
that's why we're friends.
I needed it broken down for me at a grade 3 level. And so here's basically what we came up with. It's the 4 Ds of investing. So the first D is diversification. And understanding that. And really, I'll breeze over it quickly. There's essentially 2 different types of a diversification, right? You can have diversification in sectors, meaning I'm not just invested in real estate. I'm not just invested in agriculture. I'm not just invested in energy. You know, there's also technology and healthcare and consumer spend, right? So you're diversified through different sectors, excuse me, and then you're diversified geographically. Right? So different areas of the world. And by combining those 2 levels of diversification, you create the most amount of safety in your portfolio. So that's the first D. The second D is understanding doubling. Listen, if you don't have a clear understanding of how to calculate the growth of money and compounding interest, then I would probably submit to you that it might be working against you. But here's how you do it. Albert Einstein invented it. He called it the rule of 72. So you take your rate of return, you divide that through 72, and what that will yield you is the number of years it takes your money to double or more importantly, compound, right?
Give an example with $1,000.
Right. So if my rate of return is 1%, 72 divided by 1 is 72. So it's going to take 72 years for my $1,000 to become $2,000.
Right.
If my rate of return is 10%, 72 divided by 10 is 7.2. So it's going to take 7.2 years for my $1,000 to become $2,000. And then another 7.2 years for my $2,000 to become $4,000, and so on and so on. So that's the second rule. The third rule, or the third D, is what we call dollar cost averaging. This is probably too much to explain, but this is also how you take advantage of corrections in the market. We're going through a huge correction right now in the market. I think it's going to get worse, to be honest with you, before it gets better. But the way I am taking advantage, the way our clients are taking advantage of this, is through dollar cost averaging, meaning you're making small, consistent contributions over an extended period of time. So you take advantage of the downturns. And then the fourth D, Bruno, is discipline. All right. Being disciplined with your money. Listen, there's two ways to manage your money. The majority of Canadians manage their money emotionally, which means they spend first and then they save what's left after spending. Here's what wealthy people do. They manage their money habitually. They save first and then they spend what's left after savings. And I'll end with this. Okay, this is a really neat equation that I think might drive this point home. So you've got a 25-year-old, all right, and you've got a 40-year-old. Okay, they both want to retire at 65 with $500,000 in their investment account. Okay, now they both get the exact same rate of return. Let's say they get an 8% net rate of return. So the question is, how much money per month does the 25-year-old have to save? And how much money per month does the 40-year-old have to save, knowing that they want $500,000 when they're 65 and they're both getting an 8% rate of return? Now, I'll tell you right now, the 25-year-old needs to save $173 a month. Okay. And usually when I ask people this question, I'm like, hey, so how much do you think the 40-year-old has to save? Yeah, maybe double. Here's the reality. In order to have the exact same amount of money at the exact same time at 65 years old, that 40-year-old has to save $863 a month, right? So discipline is super important when it comes to your long-term goals. You start saving money as a 25-year-old, awesome, high five, congratulations. Don't screw it up when you're 40 and start fresh, right? Don't be like, oh, well, I've got lots of time, I'm going to be making more money, I'm just going to, no, continue with your $173, ramp it up when you can, but make sure you've got a long-term savings plan, because discipline is super important. Time is the most valuable asset anyone can have when it comes to investing and saving money.
And I agree with that. And then, my financial journey has been, emotional at the beginning until I met you and we did some plans and everything, because it was, invest as a young man, because I was told the exact same thing. And then I'm like, okay, but as a young man, you're not making that much money. And all of a sudden you're seeing this investment account grow big, and you got a couple of thousands in there and you're like, oh man, now I'm broke. I need some money. So you pull it out. You say, I want to pull it out. The financial advisor is telling you, don't do it. But you say, man, I need that money because I need to go to this trip or whatever. Right. So you make these mistakes. And I want to share this because, once again, I want to bring that there's no shame or there's no guilt about making some mistakes or feedback that I've made. So that's why I'm sharing my own personal one. And then after that, I understood about compound interest, and I understood about cost over average cost over time, right? That's the one. And then right now, as the markets are going down, and then my financial advisor just told you himself, it's probably going to get worse. I'm so relaxed right now because I know that at this moment, the amount that I'm investing a month is buying more.
Exactly.
Okay.
Bruno.
I'm buying more of my investments. So when they do go up, they'll be worth more. I'll have more. So let's say I put $100 a month and I was buying 10 shares at $10, but now they're worth $2. This is what I'm buying. I'm buying, how much is it? 50 of them.
20 shares.
20 shares. I don't know. See, that's why I got
Yeah.
a financial advisor, because I
Yeah.
can't do math. So, but that's the thing. Now I know that my shares will be worth more. There's also different investments, because one of the things that I wanted to know was, some of us want to invest, but we're not really concerned about the money at 65. We want to be able to grow our wealth now. What about dividends? What about the different products that are out there, the insurance ones, the investment? Can you give us a couple of good products example?
There are lots of vehicles that you can utilize to grow and build wealth. And that's, again, part of the education. What's really important in understanding the different vehicles is understanding, honestly, how much you can put in there, and then how much you get to keep, what taxation looks like, because it doesn't matter how much money you save. It only matters how much you get to keep. And so, yes, there's a bunch of different vehicles out there that you can utilize. We always recommend diversifying and starting with the lowest tax liability first. That's really what we love to do. And I think, you know what, my man, I think we're going to need to do a round 2 here. I got someone hopping in my waiting room here at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
So I've really, really enjoyed this. I love having these conversations. And what excites me the most, Bruno, is I know you have a lot of people in your community that look up to you, that enjoy hearing what you have to say. And just the thought of being able to help a few people in getting unstuck and moving the ball forward excites me greatly. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I'd really like to invite myself back on to answer more questions here in the short future.
Absolutely, Shaun, and thank you so much, first of all, for coming here. But before you leave, just tell people where they can reach you, for those who are listening, because we'll leave all your information into the description and all that, and the links to your site and all that stuff. But if they want to reach out to you right now, what is your website and your or social media and your phone number, if there is one?
Yeah, my phone number is, I think it's on that website, but it's 250-589-0853. Any friend of Bruno is a friend of mine. You can contact me directly. You also have access to us through our website, and Bruno has that link to share. Yeah, but if for whatever reason you have a hard time finding me, and you shouldn't, please find Bruno. You obviously know how to get a hold of him, and he'll get you contacted with us. And we look forward to having any conversations at any time. We're always here to help. So thank you so much, Shaun. Bruno. Appreciate you like crazy.
I love it. I love it. Guys, this has been the battle plan. I hope you got a lot out of this, and we'll bring Shaun back. Please comment down below and ask all your questions. We'll send them to Shaun, and then that probably will be the questions for the next podcast, or we'll answer right away. Okay, so I'm Bruno, and this is the battle plan.